The New York Rangers are all set to kick off their run in the Stanley Cup playoffs against the New Jersey Devils. On today's show, going to have some final thoughts on what was another outstanding season, regular season, for the Blue Shirts. Also going to discuss some of the lasting images of the 2022-2023 campaign. Ryan Lindgren and Philip Hedl each win individual awards. And finally, going to have some predictions for the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, specifically Rangers-Devils. But we'll take a quick look at the rest of the field as well. All that and much more on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 807 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, and today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by HelloFresh. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/NHL60 and use code NHL60 for 60% off plus free shipping. And yeah, as I just mentioned, I think you look at the entire 82-game campaign here, and it'd be hard to call it anything other than a success for the New York Rangers. You know, another season where they end up with more than 100 points, 107 points to be exact, a record of 47, 22, and 13. And look, I realize that how we end up feeling about this New York Rangers season as a whole is going to have a lot to do with what happens from this point on, with what happens in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and whether or not this team ends up lifting the Stanley Cup over its head when it's all said and done. And obviously, time is going to tell there. I think they have an outstanding shot at it. But first things first, they got to play the Devils, another really tough team, a team that they're going to have to get by if they're going to have any chance of making that dream a reality. But when you look at the regular season, and it's not easy to, summarize 82 games into just a couple of minutes here, but we're going to do our best. I see this, to me, as a nice follow-up to what they did last year. And the one thing that stands out as far as being different from last year to this year, last year I thought was a little bit more consistent. They, during the entire season last year, never had a losing streak of longer than 3 games. They only had 2 3-game losing streaks the entire regular season, and that includes overtime losses, by the way. And that was it. Those are the worst stretches that the Rangers went through last season. It was a situation last year where they kind of caught a wave early, stockpiled some wins early in the season, got a little bit of a jump on everybody in the standings, or that's kind of what it felt like for sure. And I think last year, even though that they weren't really at their best at the start of the regular season, they had Igor Shesterkin to lean on. Igor was absolutely phenomenal the entire season last year, but he really stood out early in the year when the Rangers, once again, were clearly not playing their best hockey, but he was bailing them out and getting them some wins, stealing them some wins. And then you kind of just get used to winning. You get that winning feeling in the locker room. Everybody else starts to play up to their ability. And we got a really nice season for the Rangers last year. This year, a little bit more inconsistent. And to just kind of cite some examples here, I mentioned the fact that last year, only 2 separate 3-game losing streaks in the regular season. This year, there were 2 4-game losing streaks. There was also a stretch where they lost 5 of 7. There was a streak where they lost 10 of 15. They also had some impressive winning streaks by that same token. They had a 7-game winning streak that was right after Jacob Trouba threw his helmet, and we're going to discuss that in greater detail when we go to the lasting images of the Ranger season. We'll get to that a little bit later in today's episode. They also had a stretch where they went 5-0-1. They had another 7-game winning streak, and they had another stretch where they went 6-0-1. So I think that's what stands out more than anything. It felt like there were more peaks and valleys this season than there were last year. And my hope here, as a Ranger fan, as the host of this podcast, and somebody that wants to see this team make another deep run and ultimately win a Stanley Cup championship, because that's what it's all about, my hope is that going through those dark times, going through those trials and tribulations, just makes, they're better for it. They've gone through some adversity. Last year, like I said, in the regular season, I'm not taking anything away from what they did last year because it was a great year and a year where they exceeded expectations and proved a lot of people wrong, but they never really faced anything as far as adversity was concerned. As I mentioned, they caught a wave early in the season, and they basically just rode it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's basically, I'm oversimplifying it, of course, but that's kind of how it went. This year, obviously, something was just really off. They went through that stretch early in the season where just felt like they didn't want to be there. Nobody was skating. They were making mental mistakes, taking dumb penalties, and just not playing sharp, crisp New York Ranger hockey, and the kind of hockey that they certainly played last year and for the most part played this year as well. But the fact that, some guys went through some struggles this season, Igor Shesterkin for sure, he had his slumps. The star players, none of them really stood out as far as going through like a really bad slump this year. The team collectively just went through a slump. And I think, Trouba and Miller, I would say those two maybe stood out as much as anybody as far as the skaters are concerned. They both got off to a really rough start at the beginning of this year. I realize Trouba's injuries had something to do with that. But to me, that's the biggest difference between last year and this year, is that there were more peaks and valleys this year. And I just feel like I'm hopeful that they will be better for it because, once again, they went through some adversity. They had some people kind of questioning, like, was that a fluke last year? Is this team regressing? Is something going on with Gerard Gallant where they're not responding to him anymore? And they got through all that. They turned the corner. They started piling up wins. And here we are, 107-point season in the playoffs and heavyweight matchup against the Devils in the first round here. Shifting gears just a little bit, I want to discuss some awards that were won by the Rangers this season. Now, I already covered the big one, and that was Mika Zibanejad winning the team MVP. We covered that, in pretty good detail in our last episode, so definitely check that out if you want to hear my thoughts on Mika winning the MVP. For now, I'll just say, rightfully so, well-deserved. He's a phenomenal hockey player, does a little bit of everything to help the New York Rangers, and for my money, one of the truly elite two-way centers in the NHL. But to hear more detail about that, like I said, go ahead and check out our most recent episode. But to turn our attention to a couple of other individual awards that were won, I want to get to Ryan Lindgren. We already know about him winning the Stephen McDonald Extra Effort Award. We discussed that in a recent episode as well, but he also won the Players Player Award, and Philip Hedl won the John Halligan Good Guy Award. So we'll start with Lindgren here, and as I mentioned, it was great to see that pregame ceremony in the, I believe, second to last regular season game here. At this point, it's all blending together, and I'm just looking ahead to the playoffs. But yeah, Lindgren won the Stephen McDonald Extra Effort Award, and that goes to the player that goes above and beyond the line of duty. And of course, it's named after the late Stephen McDonald, who was injured in the line of duty, passed away a few years ago. But it's really a great thing that the Rangers give out that award in his honor. They've been doing it for years, long before Stephen McDonald's unfortunate passing. They're going to continue doing it for many, many years to come, I would have to imagine. And they gave it to Ryan Lindgren this year. It was his first year winning it. And so apropos, because in that game, Lindgren ends up, in his first shift of the game, he takes a high stick to the face. It was friendly fire. Chris Kreider actually got him with a high stick, obviously by accident. Banged up a little bit there. And then in the overtime, in his final shift of the game, he blocks a slap shot with his face. So it doesn't get much more, appropriate than that, I suppose you could say. Extra Effort Award, and there's Ryan Lindgren taking a beating and doing everything he can to help his team win. But he also wins the Players Player Award, and as the name would suggest, the Ranger players are the ones who vote on this award, and I can't think of a better person to win that than Ryan Lindgren. And, the fact that I think he's widely being recognized as the heart and soul of this team is a really cool thing. He doesn't stand out. Like if you go to a fan of some random team in the Western Conference and you say, name as many players on the Rangers as you can, it might be a while before they get to Ryan Lindgren. And I think it's at the point where, if you're a hockey fan and you watch this league and you follow this league, certainly you've heard of Ryan Lindgren by now. But again, if you're not a Ranger fan and you're not watching this team on a night in and night out basis, I don't think you probably understand just how important he is to the Rangers, that he really is, in reality, how important of a piece he truly is to this team. And I'm sure the same can be said for us. There's probably a random player on, the Minnesota Wild that does an outstanding job for them that we as Ranger fans don't see that often. And Minnesota Wild fans could tell us all about that player, just using them as an example. But unless you're really dialed into the Rangers and you're right on top of them, I don't think you could possibly know how important he really is to this team. And very cool to see him win that award. Speaking of awards, Philip Hedl won the John Halligan Good Guy Award, and I'm going to discuss that in just a second. We'll talk about Philip Hedl winning that award and why it's very impressive, and we will get to that in just a minute here. But first, I do have to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Athletic Greens. I use Athletic Greens literally every day. I started taking it about 10 or 11 months ago, give or take, because I wanted a supplement that actually tastes great, and I wanted to see what all the hype was about. Now I've been on it, like I said, for about 10 or 11 months, give or take, and I love it. It doesn't taste like it's super healthy, has kind of a mild tropical taste that I actually look forward to each morning. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. It is lifestyle friendly. Whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it is cheaper than your cold brew habit. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 five-star reviews. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, we just want to go ahead and thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And for the everydayers, we're going to have a very special crossover edition in tomorrow's episode with Trey Matthews from Locked On Devils. Always a good time talking hockey with Trey, and going to be a lot of fun. We've actually already recorded the episode. Very, very happy with how it came out. So hopefully you guys enjoy that, and hopefully it just gets you geared up and ready to go for New York Ranger playoff hockey. But that's tomorrow. For right now, I do want to turn our attention back to the awards here, to Filip Chytil winning the John Halligan Good Guy Award. The John Halligan Good Guy Award recognizes a player's cooperation with the media, and to get the exact verbiage here, it is for, quote, season-long willingness to cooperate with the media. And for some context here, John Halligan was a public relations director with the New York Rangers and then was later an executive with the NHL. He passed away in January of 2010. But it's obviously, a really cool award, and one that, obviously if a player wins it, it's certainly an honor. And it goes to Filip Chytil this year. And I thought that Vince Mercogliano made a great point about this on Twitter because, obviously everybody's, tweeting this out, and, Filip Chytil has won the John Halligan Good Guy Award. The fact that, Filip Chytil won this award, despite the fact that English is not his first language, and, that's kind of been an ongoing process where he's gotten better at English, I think that's especially impressive. It's impressive to win this award no matter what, but the fact that Filip Chytil is always there, always faces the music, always gives, thought-provoking, thoughtful answers, doesn't just kind of go to the wall of cliches, so to speak, where, we need to play better, we need to get pucks deep. No, the fact that he actually, goes out of his way to give good, thoughtful answers, I think is really a cool thing and something that Filip Chytil should be commended for. And of course, here he is recognized it, winning the John Halligan Good Guy Award. And it kind of reminds me of something that Filip Chytil said recently, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but he was asked about, we were coming down the stretch here in the regular season, just a couple of games left, and, the Rangers are still behind the Devils and Canes, which, of course, is where they ended up in the standings. But Filip Chytil was asked about, the importance of home ice advantage and how much do you guys think about it, and, something along those lines. And Filip Chytil, and I'm paraphrasing again here, but he basically said, if we want to win a Stanley Cup, we have to be able to beat anybody anywhere. And that's a great mindset to have, and I think it kind of sums up everything pretty nicely. It sums up the team's mindset. And look, on this podcast and on Twitter and, everywhere else, anybody who follows this team, covers this team or whatever, at one time or another, you probably had a discussion with a family member, a friend, just somebody who cheers for the Rangers like you do about like, should they go all out and try to get home ice, or should they make sure everybody gets healthy? And Filip Chytil just kind of simplifying everything there, saying that whether we're home or away, we got to find a way to get the job done. We have a goal of winning the Stanley Cup, and it won't happen if we're not capable of beating any team, anywhere in this country or, even in Canada, if it comes down to that. So yeah, great stuff for Filip Chytil there, and really cool to see him recognized with that award. I also wanted to talk about some of the lasting images and moments of this season, of this regular season. That's an important distinction there, of the regular season for the New York Rangers. And the first thing that comes to my mind, and it might come to your mind pretty quickly as well, is the Jacob Trouba helmet throw. The Rangers were down and out. They were just playing god-awful hockey. It wasn't just that they were losing. Something was just off. Nobody was skating. Nobody was like fighting for pucks. nobody really seemed to want to go to work for some reason. It was just a complete 180 of everything that we saw from this team last year. And I don't know if it was maybe a little bit of a hangover from having that deep playoff run last year, or maybe they thought they could just outskill everybody, which, I mean, you might be able to pull that off once in a while, but man, in this league, you got to outwork somebody if you want to win games and if you want to be a consistent winner and if you want to ultimately be a Stanley Cup champion. But that Jacob Trouba helmet throw, man, yelled at the bench, fired his helmet into the boards. He had just gotten into a fight right before that. It was I want to say 5-2 loss to the Chicago Blackhawks, just another ugly performance. And then after that, Rangers go on a 7-game win streak. It turned the season around. We could debate how much the helmet throw had to do with that, but it had to have something to do with it. And, there were people that were critical of Trouba when he did that. There were, Ranger non-fans, Ranger haters, shall we say. They were kind of making fun of him for that, and, what a baby and this, that, and the other thing. I loved it because we had already done the whole thing where, Gerard Gallant had called out the team once or twice. The players had talked to the media and said, we got to be better. We need to hold each other accountable and all that kind of stuff. We had already had the players-only meeting. What was left to do at that point? You needed to make an impact. You need to jolt everybody. It's not like he did this, while the Rangers were just having an off night and had won 5 straight games coming into that game. No, they were playing terrible, and he needed to kind of snap them out of it. And props to Trouba for doing that, stepping up big time as a leader in his first season as a New York Ranger captain. So that's the first image that comes to mind for me from this regular season is the Trouba helmet throw. Another one, and we're going to kind of cheat a little bit here because this is a really dramatic win for the Rangers. It's kind of 2-for-1 here. Rangers down by the Stars, less than a second remaining. You've got K'Andre Miller tying the game with less than a second remaining. Just the reaction by the Rangers and how excited they were and how excited the fans were at Madison Square Garden. All of that just kind of is an image that I'll remember after this season. And then, of course, Fox winning it in overtime. Chaotic scramble in front of the Dallas net and, seeing Panarin go running over to him or skating over to him, kind of jumping up and down. That image of the Rangers, just kind of mobbing Fox there. That's another one that will certainly stand out for me. And that was a really nice win for the Rangers against a quality opponent. Another one, just because it was fun, it was somewhat early in the season. I want to say a little bit before the midway point. Just the image of the kid line was out there and they scored a goal and everybody was kind of celebrating and jumping on each other and everybody just kind of like fell to the ice in a dog pile. I mean, on one hand, I'm kind of holding my breath there because everybody's falling on the ice. Please, nobody get hurt. Nobody get cut with a skate or anything like that. But it was kind of a funny moment. And I think of like all the Ranger lines that do that. That would be the kid line, right? Because they're kids, right? They're out there having fun and like goofing around almost after the goal. Again, just kind of a fun image and one that I'll certainly remember. I will also say that first image you get of Vladimir Tarasenko in a Ranger jersey, and then Patrick Kane in a Ranger jersey. And people, on social media, I mean, before these trades even happen, people have fun with Photoshop, and they'll, show Patrick Kane in a Ranger jersey, or same thing with Patrick Kane, or Ranger sweater if you prefer. I know they both get used. But yeah, I mean, to see it actually legitimately happening, in the flesh, they're on the ice, they're playing a game for the New York Rangers, they're wearing the New York Ranger colors. Pretty surreal moment. Both of them, obviously former Cup champions, both of them had spent more than a decade with the only team that they had ever played for. And now, next thing you know, they're on the New York Rangers, and Rangers are pushing their chips in, and they're going for a Stanley Cup. And pretty surreal moment. I mean, for Tarasenko and then especially for Patrick Kane, I thought first time seeing them, first of all, just playing with anyone other than the Blues and Blackhawks respectively, but then even more so seeing them with the New York Rangers, pretty surreal stuff there. So that for sure. This is kind of a recent one. Maybe there's a little bit of recency bias here, but the end of the Ranger Lightning game, and that game was just out of control. All the fighting, all the chippiness, all the nastiness, all the smack talk back and forth. But Ben Harper, somebody posted a picture of this. He fought Corey Perry at the end of that game, and the linesmen are breaking it up. Ben Harper just had like this big smile on his face, like just kind of listening to whatever Corey Perry was chirping about. So that's one that kind of stands out for me, a personal favorite. I will also say just the image of Artemi Panarin scoring his 4th goal of the game against the Carolina Hurricanes. Panarin, he's an assist-first guy. We know that. We know he wants to set up his buddies. And the thing I like is he has been shooting a little bit more often down the stretch, so I'm enjoying seeing him do that. But he's certainly always going to be a pass-first guy, for the most part. But seeing him go off for 4 goals against the Hurricanes, and that was a game in which he started with Tarasenko. It was before Patrick Kane got here. So Panarin was out there with Tarasenko. I think he was excited to be playing with him. And Tarasenko, they juggled the lines in the middle of the game, and Panarin was out there without Tarasenko. I almost feel like that kind of lit a fire under Panarin. He wasn't really all that happy about it. He wanted a chance to, play with his friend and see what they could do out there together. But, I mean, he just went off in this game, completely took over. And then seeing him, I want to say it was VZ or maybe Hedel, who passed out of the corner to Panarin in front, and Panarin had his back to the net. And as he's turning around, you could tell he was going to shoot, and I just said, count it. He was in the zone at that point. He was playing with a vengeance, and he was going to score. So seeing him score his 4th goal in that game was big as well. And we'll bookend this whole thing with another Jacob Trouba moment. I'm going to say that hit that he had when the Rangers were playing the Calgary Flames. You had Nazem Kadri carrying the puck over the Ranger blue line, and Trouba just absolutely annihilated him with a hit that was 100% clean. It was shoulder to chest. It was the second big hit from Trouba in that game, second time that he was attacked after delivering a big clean hit. But hey, he'll face the music. If somebody wants to fight Jacob Trouba, rather, he'll certainly oblige and he'll drop the gloves. Something else that I loved about this too is this was the second big hit from Trouba. It was also the second fight that he was in this game. After it happened, after the fight happened, Trouba he wasn't like angry or mad or upset or like too intense, like it was, like he was over the top. He just had such like a matter-of-fact look on his face as he's skating to the penalty box, just kind of like, all right, like if this is going to keep happening and I have to keep fighting, then I guess that's what we'll do. But, Kadri, for his part, said it was a clean hit after the game as well. And, just seeing that hit from Jacob Trouba, I mean, it takes a lot anymore because, like, I've been watching hockey for a long time, and obviously in the playoffs, I'm going to be, a little bit more animated, like I'm sure all of you will as well. But in the regular season, because I'm covering these games and I'm taking these notes and, okay, what are we going to talk about in the next episode? For me to, like, really, like, loudly react to something, it takes a lot more now than it probably used to. He delivered that hit, and I just said, oh, my God. Like, it was as nasty of a hit, but as clean of a hit at the same time as you will ever see. Just absolutely cleaned his clock. Again, shoulder to chest, clean all the way. But, man, what a hit that was, and one of those images, and one of those moments that I think a lot of Ranger fans will probably remember for the regular season. Of course, there's others. We're going to, after the season ends, whatever happens here in the Rangers playoff run, we're going to have a bunch of episodes where we kind of recap the season and talk about the best wins of the season and, the biggest moments of the season, the overtime winners, whatever it might be. We always have a lot of fun with our end of season, rankings and countdowns and just lists of different moments and different wins that the Rangers had. So we will get to that stuff. And you guys, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and leave your comments in the comment section here on YouTube and let me know, what are some of the lasting images of this season for you guys. I'd love to hear. Maybe I'll even read a couple of them in a future episode. I think that could be a lot of fun. But yeah, for me, off the top of my head, making a little list here, those were the ones that really stood out for me, lasting images. But as far as lasting images are concerned, we hope that most of these that I just mentioned here pale in comparison for what's to come. And that's the beautiful thing about this time of the season. First of all, Stanley Cup playoffs are just awesome. Two types of people in this world. You've got people that love the Stanley Cup playoffs, and you've got people that have never watched Stanley Cup playoffs for one reason or another. I don't see how anyone, especially if you're a sports fan in general, can watch the Stanley Cup playoffs and be like, oh, this sucks. This is boring. There's no way. They're just a ton of fun. And that kind of leads me into the next thing I want to talk about here. We're going to do some Stanley Cup predictions. But like I said, as far as the lasting images of this season are concerned, I think the hope among Ranger fans is that we're just getting warmed up and there's many, many more to come throughout what we once again hope will be a very lengthy New York Ranger playoff run. We're going to keep everything rolling in just a second here. I do want to make a couple of predictions as far as the first round of the playoffs. I mean, obviously, people are fixated on the Rangers. This is Locked On New York Rangers, but I might as well weigh in and give you guys my predictions as well. And again, if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to leave your comment there as far as, what you think is going to happen in the playoffs, which team is going to beat which team, what's your upset special, all that fun stuff. We will do all that in just a second. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. Like I said, I want to kind of weigh in. Everybody does not everybody, but, a lot of hockey fans at this time of the year on NHL.com, you can do your playoff bracket predictions and fill out a bracket. And I believe, I haven't looked at it this year. I want to say, obviously you can pick the winner of every series and pick who you ultimately believe will lift the Stanley Cup. I think you can even do it specifically where you can pick, like, okay, this team is going to beat this team in 6 games, or this series is going to go 7, and that team's going to win. So if you guys haven't done that yet, I do recommend it. It is a lot of fun, and like I said, I'm hoping to to fill out one of my own a little bit later here before the playoffs start. But as far as my predictions for the first round are concerned, and once again, if you have your predictions, go ahead and leave them in the YouTube comment section there. But we'll go through the whole thing here. We'll start with Avalanche against Kraken. Kraken have obviously gotten better, just their second season of existence and kind of a well-rounded team there, but I got to go with the Avalanche. The Avalanche, they're a team that it almost feels like it's kind of what happens with the Lightning, where they're not at their best for chunks of the season, but they know how to step on the gas when they need to. And the Avalanche did that down the stretch. They're going to be playing the Kraken here, and I think the Avs take this one in 5 games. Wild Stars, I mean, this seems like a pretty even matchup on paper. Looking at the standings, they were kind of neck and neck the whole season. I mean, really, in that division, it was basically the Avalanche, the Stars, and the Wild, all three of them kind of jumping each other at various points during the season. I'm going to say the Minnesota Wild win this one in 7 games for no real reason other than the fact that, again, I just think it's two, fairly evenly matched teams, and I think it's going to be a good series, and somebody's going to win it in 7, and I'll give Minnesota the slight edge there. We go to the Knights and the Jets. Knights have been pretty consistent all season. They've been at or near the top of that division. And the Jets, they got off to a nice start. They kind of died down the stretch a little bit. And honestly, I mean, they barely hung on to that last playoff spot. So to me, it's two teams that just kind of feels like they're going in opposite directions, which doesn't always mean everything, but I think the Knights win this one fairly comfortably as you can win a Stanley Cup playoff series. I'll give the Jets 1 win, so I'll say Knights in 5 there. You got the Kings and the Oilers. This is kind of my upset special, I guess we could say, of the first round. I'm going to say the Kings take down the Oilers. The Kings have an interesting blend of veterans and young guys. And the Oilers, I don't know. They seem like that team that's not quite ready to break through in the playoffs. There's just so much reliance on McDavid and Draisaitl to kind of carry the load there. I mean, you could throw Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in there as well, but it's just a team that I don't think has a ton of depth, and that's something that can really kind of burn you when it comes playoff time. I think the Kings have more depth than the Oilers, and there's part of me that really doesn't think I should be picking against Connor McDavid because he's just in a class of his own right now, but I will say the Kings take down the Oilers in 6 games here. We move to the Eastern Conference. We've got Bruins and Panthers. I know that, a lot of hockey fans are kind of comparing this to a situation like what we saw years ago when the Lightning had that amazing regular season and they lost to the Blue Jackets and were actually swept by the Blue Jackets in the first round. And, the Bruins haven't played an important game in weeks or even months, and the Panthers had to scratch and claw their way into the playoffs. That's all well and good and everything, but I'm not going to discount what the Bruins did in the regular season. The Bruins are a team, a veteran team, and I just feel like, they're going to get it done. They're going to be the same team that we've seen pretty much all year, and I think they're going to certainly be a tough out in the playoffs. I did see where Bergeron might miss game 1, but regardless, I think the Bruins win this, and I think they win it not like crazy easily, but I'm going to say they win it in 5 games. And, the Panthers might push them in some games here and there, but I think the Bruins take this, and we see them pretty much be the team that they've been all season. Lightning and Leafs. This one, right away, before I even picked a winner, I said, okay, 7 games, because it was a great series last year. It was a ton of fun. I'm going to go Lightning over Leafs. I was kind of torn here, but look at what we've seen in the playoffs from both of these two teams the last couple of years. The Lightning keep making it to the Stanley Cup Finals. The Leafs can't get out of the first round. Now, on one hand, I guess you could argue something has to give eventually, and eventually the Leafs are going to break the curse here, but I don't know, man. I have a tough time picking against the battle-tested Tampa Bay Lightning, and I think they take down the Leafs in 7 games. Once again, closing it out on the road in Toronto with a Game 7 win. Heavyweight matchup there. Canes and Islanders. I came close to taking the Islanders here. I'm going to say Canes in 7 games. I do think the Svechnikov loss is big for the Canes, and that is something that's going to hurt them. The Islanders obviously had to play well down the stretch to work their way into the playoffs, but yeah, the Canes, I mean, they're a team that I guess you could say mixed results in the playoffs. They're always there. It feels like they've won that division, for quite some time now. It feels like they're always at or near the top of the Metro. I'm going to say the Canes take down the Islanders. I just think they have a little bit better of a team, and I'll say the Canes edge them out in 7 games. Rangers, Devils. So, as I mentioned, we're going to have our crossover episode with Trey Matthews tomorrow. We already recorded it, so I'm going to do a little bit of a spoiler here because at the end of the episode, Trey and I each give our prediction for Rangers versus Devils, and I will say the same thing now that I said when I was recording with Trey. I think the Rangers beat the Devils in 7 games, closing out with a 3-2 win on the road in New Jersey against the Devils. The final goal is going to be Panarin, or the game-winning goal, rather, Panarin to Fox to Mika for the game winner. And I won't say, how much time is going to be left. I'm not going to be quite that specific, but it's going to be a dogfight. And the reason for this, the reason I think it's going 7 games is, you look at what the Rangers and Devils have done the last couple of years, even go back 2 or 3 years when neither one of these teams was frankly all that good. They were both rebuilding, both trying to put the pieces back together, both trying to, search for an identity. Even when that was the case and both teams were down in the standings, every time the Rangers and Devils played each other, it had kind of a big fight feel to it, and the game would get nasty, it would get chippy, we'd see some fighting, we'd see, comebacks, we'd see, one team or the other tying the game late in the third period. We'd see the game go into overtime with all kinds of crazy things happening. We saw, like a 7-round shootout when Chris Kreider beat the Devils either last year or the year before. I think it was last year. It's always so competitive, and that was the case even when both these teams were still struggling. Now they're both good. Now they're both 100-plus point teams for the season. They're meeting each other in the playoffs. I expect nothing less than just an absolute dogfight, an absolute roller coaster of a series. And I'm also going to make one other prediction here. I'm going to say 2 of the games of this 7-game series go into overtime, at least 2. And I'll say each team wins 1. Each team wins 1 of the overtime. I'll keep Trey's prediction a secret. You'll find that out in tomorrow's episode. He picked probably the way that you would all expect it to. I don't know how many Locked On hosts are going to pick against their own team when it comes to doing these crossover episodes and these predictions here, but that's actually the last thing I want to mention before we call it a day here. So it's Monday as I'm recording this. As we know, the Stanley Cup playoffs start tonight. We've got 4 games tonight and then 4 games tomorrow night. As you're hearing this on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, there are crossover episodes all across Locked On NHL. So there's a crossover right now between the Leafs and the Lightning. There's a crossover between the Panthers and the Bruins, so on and so forth. And I highly recommend checking those out. I'm going to be doing the same thing as soon as I'm done recording here. I'm going to basically just play one after the other while I'm working from home here and just kind of get the rundown of all these playoff series. It's a fantastic way to kind of get a feel for what else is going on around the NHL, what the storylines are heading into these series. All the Locked On hosts do such a great job, so definitely check that out. I think you'll have a lot of fun, and I think you'll, if you listen to all these preview editions, these special crossover preview editions, I think you'll find yourself even more immersed in the series then. For example, if you listen to, say, the crossover between Lightning and Leafs, then you watch Lightning and Leafs, you catch a game or multiple games between those 2 teams, you'll just kind of feel like you know what's going on and you'll know what the storylines are, and I think you'll just enjoy it that much more. So definitely check out the other crossovers. That will do it for today on Locked On New York Rangers, your team every day. If you would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com, and definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, at @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is at @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time. Thanks for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. Every dayers, tomorrow on the show, like I said, special crossover preview edition with Trey Matthews of Locked On New Jersey Devils.